Now we can all stop laughing. All right.
Oh,
the
Damn it.
Supreme Court considers mandatory government funding of religious education.
Oh, so is it for a mosque or a synagogue or a temple or
They're
a
gonna
temple
enforce
or a temple?
Sharia law or something like that? No.
I mean, whatever.
In
Christian
Espinoza
Sharia.
versus Montana Department of Revenue, the Supreme Court will address a question that would have been unthinkable to ask even until quite recently. Can a state be forced to underwrite religious education with taxpayer dollars? Although the court has previously allowed the government to adopt school voucher programs that provide indirect government aid to religious schools, it has never suggested that the U.S. Constitution somehow requires them to do so, and certainly not in the face of state constitutional rules barring taxpayer funding of religious education. Yet it is essentially what the petitioners are seeking in Espinoza, the latest in a disturbing line of cases attacking the very foundations of the separation of church and state. At issue in Espinoza is a voucher-type program in Montana designed to divert millions in government dollars to private schools, the overwhelming majority of which are religiously affiliated.
Oh.
So tons of
God.
taxpayer dollars going to private schools.
Yes.
So what's private about them then?
I don't understand.
If they're being publicly funded, just privately run.
I think they're being privately run by religious groups. I think that's what makes them.
Well,
Hey,
the program...
They've got Jesus. They don't need Uncle Sam.
We've already got problems with our public school system already, and it's already,
Tapped out.
yeah, it's already tapped out in a lot of areas across the country, and yet we're diverting more public funding to private schools.
And how many times have you heard, I don't want my tax dollars going to them Planned Parenthood places?
Yeah. It's very much
But
like, it is.
If we're going to argue about where our tax dollars go,
It's sort of, when Andrew Seidel stopped by, I can't believe that I didn't ask him that, or that I haven't taken the time to call Andrew or whatever, about, because presumably they're going to cite in whatever oral arguments they make, whatever briefs they file, they're going to cite Trinity Lutheran versus, I forget which, West State, which was an asinine back-asswards ruling about, this religious organization can apply for public funding, and you can't exclude them from potentially...
Oh, yeah, they wanted money for a playground.
They got it.
Yeah, they
got it. With that, because they were like, they're funding a part of the organization that isn't explicitly religious. But to me, that seems like exactly the opposite reasoning that was applied when the U.S. government was providing funding to Planned Parenthood for the non-abortion parts.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Where it's like, well, if they're providing funding for the organization, then they're paying for, all the coffee cups. So the money that they would have spent on coffee cups goes to abortions. I only use that example because...
subsidizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they can't operate without government funding as a public school, then...
Or as a private school, you mean?
Yeah. Sorry, as a private school, then,
they fail.
Raise your
welcome to the free market.
Exactly. Yeah. Shouldn't these right-wingers, and especially right-wing Christian conservatives, they often claim to care so much about the free market.
Yeah.
And yet we have more and more of this.
If your pastor has more than one jet, there's enough money to fund a school.
So here's the thing about private schools is that they are a for-profit education institution.
Yeah.
If they are unable to meet their financial obligations and they need to raise their tuition or whatever, because if they're looking for subsidization, they're looking to maintain or protect their bottom line.
Yeah. Well, that and they should do more fundraising. So I don't know whether they're actually they might be organized as nonprofits. I don't know, but yeah, you're never gonna
Private schools? I don't think so.
I
went to a private school.
Me too, but I didn't look at their budget.
Yeah. The program they're talking about was enacted in 2015. It allows taxpayers to receive dollar-for-dollar tax credits for donations to student scholarship organizations, SSOs.
That's going to be the workaround, is that it's...
Which then awards scholarships to students attending private elementary and secondary schools. In other words, if a taxpayer owes the state, say, $100 in taxes, she can decide instead to send that money directly to an SSO, which will then spend it on private school scholarships. In practice, the tax credit program has served its unmistakable goal of funneling government dollars to religious education. The only SSO operating in the state supports 13 private schools, 12 of which are religiously affiliated, and over 94% of program scholarships have gone to finance religious education.
Yeah, so it's an illusion of choice.
Yeah, I was going to say, it'd be interesting to know what their criteria was for choosing which scholarships to fund. That would be
I've never
to
heard of
know.
scholarships for elementary kids.
Yeah, that's kind of weird.
All the schools are expensive now. You can't get...
I heard of scholarships.
We don't want you to have
college.
your education, forgetting that it's a public good and that the free market actually calls for a subsidy.
I think that the whole like choosing to have your tax dollars allocated a certain way, it's a nice idea. I think a lot of libertarians would really like it, but
I mean,
I think it's fundamentally flawed. It's kind of it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm not going to ever drive down that road, so I don't want my tax dollars paying for that road. It's asinine.
yeah.
Yep.
I was going to say, I do affect where my tax dollars go by electing a representative to the government because
Right,
we're
by
a republic. We're a republic and not a direct democracy. But mostly my problem is the one that you're highlighting, which is people don't understand what public goods are, and any government program gets called socialism now. It's no wonder. Like, I don't understand how people in the extremists that are trying to fuck up our government as much as they can, I don't know how they don't understand that there are people my age that are like, yes, socialism, because they've spent decades calling anything that a government does socialist and also trying to break that government. And when my generation goes, actually, there are public goods, I do want my government to do something, you're calling that socialism, I'm identifying with that idea. That's why I'm using this word that doesn't accurately describe any of this.
Well, it's just become a catch-all. Scare word.
Yeah,
it's essentially lost meaning to a huge number of people.
Yeah.
You know?
Means bad to a lot of people.
So
the Montana Department of Revenue promulgated a rule that would bar SSO scholarships from funding religious education and training at private religious schools. Parents of students attending such schools challenged the rule in court, claiming that it unconstitutionally discriminated against them by excluding religious schools from the tax credit program.
My God.
Recognizing the clear conflict with the state's no-aid provision, the Montana Supreme Court struck down the entire program, abolishing tax credit funding for all private schools in the state, whether religious or not.
Good. Good.
That's one way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't...
if you
It
can't
says
do it
still.
fairly, don't do it.
Hold on. It said recognizing the inherent conflict is what it said?
Yeah.
So, let the money go back to public schools then. They need it.
Yeah.
They need it and a lot more.
Recognizing the clear conflict with the state's no-aid provision. Yeah.
See, you said that this was going to be a bad story and it ended up being good.
Well, the headline sounded bad.
Yeah.
Well, the headline
But the headline was clickbait.
Well, no. But the headline was the Supreme Court will consider blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And it's that. So we're going to get another...
Oh, boy, right.
In case you didn't know,
They
the
took it
last
to the
two
Supreme
appointments
Court.
to the Supreme
Yes.
Court are activist judges.
Thanks for bringing us back down. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you should know the truth.
Yeah.
And sometimes the truth ain't what you like.
So before we move on...
Now we're woke, and woke sucks.
Oh, boy.
Before we move on...
Woke sucks. I think we can agree.
Woke sucks.